So now I will turn to my slides and share with you our my thoughts, understanding of Sarvāmnāya Tantra. And I do so with the hope that this will be meaningful to many of you who know far more about Sarvamnaya than I do, but also meaningful to perhaps those who are not so familiar with the tradition. So I want to start with two important scriptural passages. One is Skanda Purana 4.2.73, at least 16th century, so at least 400 years old. This passage just simply highlights that this term Sarvamnaya is known even in the mainstream Puranic tradition. So as you can see, Ishvara Uvacha, Sura Shreshta, Tapa Shreshta, Sarvamnaya, Nidhirbhava Shreshte Karana Samartyam Tavastu Madanugrahat. So the Lord of Lords said to Brahma, O best of gods, O best of ascetics, be the treasure mine, the nidir of all the transmissions. There's the phrase Sarvamnaya. You may have this creative power by my grace. Now, kind of more relevant for Tantra in Nepal, and again highlighting that this term Sarvamnaya and the concept related to it with regards to Tantric practice is not something just unique to Nepal. We find it in the subcontinent. We find it in such important Tantric scriptures as Tripura Rahasya 1.28, Ye Sangataha Purna Diksham Shri Mahapadukayutam Maha Shri Shodashi Yuktam Sarvamnaya Samanvitam. Those who have attained the complete Diksha, the Purna Diksha, do so through the Mahapaduka, which is a particular initiation and mantra within Sarvamnaya that includes the Mahashodashi mantra of Tripura Sundari, and interweaves Samanvitam, incorporates, is connected to all of the revelations. So the idea here is that the complete Diksha is one that includes the other Dikshas and culminates here in the completion of the Sarvamnaya. There are four key words here: Sarvamnaya, Mahashodashi, the Purna Diksha, and the Mahapaduka. As Stanishwar explained to me just this weekend, all of these concepts are found within the Sarvamnaya Paddatis, or ritual manuals of Nepal. The Sarvamnaya is by no means a minority tradition. It is an extremely important tradition that reflects the kind of apex and synthesis of the finest in Indian thought, particularly Tantric thought. Other sources, Purusharyanava is very important for understanding Sarvamnaya. The Varahi Tantra is also important for understanding Sarvamnaya. The Para Tantra, which has been edited by Madhav, Nepalese manuscripts, both at the National Archives and also in the personal collections of Upasakas like Stanishwar and Lord Sri. We see the kind of logic of Sarvamnaya reflected in temple design and architectural structure. Ramhari Timhosina has talked to me about this. And even the very design of cities themselves, like Bhaktapur, which incorporate the Navadurga, the multiple deities, reflecting this idea of a system of revelation that includes multiple initiations, multiple deities, multiple traditions. So we will talk more about this. A quick note here on Sarvamnaya versus Shadamnaya. My friend and teacher, Mark Dichkowski, has done brilliant work on Nepalese Tantra. He's unparalleled as far as Western scholars go in the study of Nepal. I have great respect for him. It is his thesis that Shadamnaya is the dominant term and concept in Nepal, the 6 revelations. For those of you who don't know, Amnaya means stream or revelation, referring to scriptural revelation. And he writes in his work, he criticized my use of Sarvamnaya, identified it as a concept that was unique to the Parbatiyas, a particular caste within Nepal, and foreign to the Newars. My research shows that this is not, in fact, true. Sarvamnaya extends beyond distinctions between Parvatiya and Newar. It interconnects and extends across caste delineations. The operative idea in Nepal is not that it's just 6 revelations, but it's all the revelations. As far as my own understanding of Tantra goes, Sarvamnaya Tantra, and also kind of the origins of the tradition itself, I have to honor humbly Staneshwar Tirumala. This is one of my favorite photos of him. This was on the way to Manakamana Temple in Nepal back in 1997. I was a Fulbright dissertation scholar, and I was introduced to Staneshwar by Mukundaraj Aryal, who is also one of my teachers. And he was introduced to me as the foremost authority on Nepalese Tantra, and I was very honored and grateful and fortunate to have met him and spent that whole year studying Nitya Shodashi Karnava and visiting sacred sites relevant to Sarvamnaya, and particularly the Sri Vidya tradition. And I want to honor Staneshwar's teachers, including Prem Chetan and Prem Chaitanya, and also Ramji Malviya and Vidyanath Upadhyaya, who is a teacher to many others also currently on this forum. And I want to honor more ancient teachers like Abhinavagupta from Kashmir. Some have said that in my book, The Goddess Beyond and Within the 3 Cities, that I don't mention Trika. This actually isn't true. If you check the index, there are multiple references to Trika. In fact, in my dissertation, I wanted to prove that the Trika Kaula Nandul system of Kashmir was still living in Nepal. The focus shifted a little bit to Sarvamnaya, but now the evidence seems quite clear, and Staneshwar can speak more about this, and also Lord Sri and others, that the Kashmir tradition does indeed live in Nepal, and it's important to understand that tradition as one of the key revelations, not the only, but one of the key revelations for Sarvamnaya. In that regard, I want to honor Swami Muktananda, who first initiated me into Trika Kala traditions, and then also Balajinatha Pandit, who you see on the left here, with the great scholar of Kashmir Shaivism, John Nemec, and my daughter, Sarita. This is back in 1996, before I came to Nepal to study with Staneshwar. I was fortunate to study with Balajinatha Pandit and to read Ishvara Pratyabhijna Karika. I also want to recognize the important Buddhist teachers who have influenced the development of Tantra as well as Sarvamnaya in Nepal. Guru Rinpoche, first and foremost. I still remember fondly visiting his cave at Pharphing and seeing the handprint that is in the rock at the top of the cave ceiling. If you get to go to this place, is so powerful in there. And the narrative is that he was doing his tantric sadhana, and he put his hand up on the cave ceiling and left this powerful imprint. In Nepal, I was very fortunate to meet Dilgo Khyentse, and to the right, Urgyen Tulku. And earlier in my life, I received the Black Hat ceremony from the 16th Karmapa. And through these teachers, I was introduced to Dzogchen and Mahamudra practice. We also have to recognize Gaudiya, Sahajiya traditions. Vidyapati, a 15th century Sahajiya poet, is born in Mithila and right on the border of southern Nepal. when you visit Mithila, the Nepalese tradition is alive there as well, and we have to understand the influence of Vaishnava streams. And this is part of what makes Nepalese Tantra so rich, as we look here at this wood carving of Vaishnavi, Tantric, Vaishnava representation of Parashakti Mahadevi, is that Nepal has preserved these traditions. It has been a locus, a site from which the tantric traditions from around the subcontinent have gone to Nepal. Nepal, and the whole, seated as it is in the center of the Himalayas, is the Uttara Pita, the northern Pita. And much of Tantra originates in Nepal, and what doesn't originate in Nepal flows to Nepal. And Nepal is spared from British colonial conquest and Muslim conquest, and it survives its Maoist revolution and the efforts to kind of reduce traditional religion. So what we have today in Nepal, my friends, is something really quite extraordinary, I believe. And that is that the entire tradition of Tantra, extending back hundreds, if not thousands of years, is preserved still in Nepal, and also synthesized and developed in ways that are unique to Nepal. You want to understand Kashmir Shaivism, you want to understand Gaudiya Sahajiya Vaishnavism, you want to understand the Sri Vidya, go to Nepal. And what you will find there is this incredible mix of traditions that incorporate different peoples and communities. And one of the very important places to go, especially if you're interested in Kashmir Shaiva developments, is the Khas region of Nepal. And there you will also find this really rich fusion of Tantra together with indigenous shamanic practices. And in this place, as in Kathmandu Valley, what you come to realize is that the idea of the Sarvāmnāya, which is this understanding of an integration of revelations from distinct places throughout the subcontinent and from distinct peoples and communities, reflects this theology of Veda. From the one arise the many, and the many are a reflection of the one. And this becomes a very beautiful and powerful sociological and political vision grounded in culture and religious practice, where you get the creation of a community that embraces diversity. It affirms diversity. It recognizes that the margins can exist in the center, and the center extending to the margins, that this is a part of one larger Mandala, Nepala Mandala, a community of diverse peoples with diverse histories, and yet sharing connection to and power from the center. That center being the divine, being the goddess, Mahadevi, Parashakti, Vaishnavi, whatever your name is. There is this idea of bringing about that kind of sense of interconnection and sharing of a lived social, political, religious, cultural space. So this was a place I spent time with Stanishwar in 1996-97. This is where Mark Dyczkowski, this is where anyone goes who's interested in accessing the textual traditions of Nepal. The Nepal National Archive, such a treasure for important sources. What you find here is that there are ancient manuscripts of the Nitya Shodashi Karnava, there's Para Tantra, there is Varahi Tantra, and the list goes on, because these tantras were practiced in Nepal or preserved in Nepal. And again, so many of them live in the private collections, the paddhatis, the ritual manuals of the various upasakas or tantric practitioners in Nepal. Such a treasure trove of sacred information. So let me now just dive into the kind of practice, as it were, the mysticism of this great tradition. And I take us here to Pashupatinath, which within it, this is not the Pashupatinath image, but it's similar to it. You have the Panchamukha Linga. And on this Panchamukha Linga, the 5 faces, every day is drawn a sandalwood paste of the Sri Yantra, which you can see in this small shrine at Pashupatinath to the right. So we have to understand there are 5 faces plus 1 on the top. These are the 6 faces. The upper, and then also, the 4 faces around the linga, 1 on top, and then the foundation or the base. These are the 6 faces from which come the 6 streams of revelation here. The idea is a representation of a totality, a multiplicity arising from one that is the whole. This is the foundational idea of Sarvamnaya, and we find this in the logic of the Vishvarupa, the form that is the universal form, as we see here with Vishvarupa Kali. And this was an idea that I was first going to introduce to and dived into in 1996, when I did field work with Mukundaraj Aryal on the Changunarayan temple, and wrote a book called Vishvarupa Mandir, the Temple of the Universal Form. And what I was so impressed with here is the way in which the symbolism of the temple architecture itself embodied Vishvarupa. The struts showed the vyuha and the avatara, and the temple symbolism included the idea of the antaryaman, the inner dweller, as well as the idea of the supreme God, who together with his Shakti manifests all creation. Yotabata deri janminchan derai pratibimbita ra ekako avatara ho. From the one arise the many, and reflect and are the embodiment of the one. So this same logic, as I understand it, and of course Stanishwar and Vidyanathaji and Sandeep and Lord Sri, all of you can correct me, and I will admit my error. But for me, I see a connection between Vishvarupa, Veda, Vada, the idea of the one in the many, and the very logic of how the Sarvamnaya system operates. And I see the ramifications, implications of this as being simultaneously theological, philosophical, cultural, sociological, and political. Excuse me. Okay, so now kind of diving into the more subtle esoteric practices, the mysticism, the spirituality, the power of this tradition is one that integrates the inner world, the private world, the antar yaga, the inner sacrifice, with the outer world, the bahir yaga, the mesocosm and the microcosm, in turn linked to the macrocosm. In this regard, a great sadhaka who has now passed away, Siddhi Gopal Vaidya, he was an Ayurvedic doctor. I was very fortunate to meet him and spend time speaking with him about Sarvamnaya while I was in Nepal in 1997. And he talked about the Sarvamnaya path as a journey to the top of Mount Meru, which was appropriate because in the Kundalini yoga system of Tantra, central nadi, the Sushumna nadi, is identified as the Meru nadi, the mountain within, because the inner world and the outer world are deeply linked. And what he explained is that the idea of the Sarvamnaya is that you receive a series of initiations that awaken the Kundalini Shakti. Each initiation comes associated with a particular stream of revelation, a deity, and a mantra. So my research suggests to me that the names of the deities of certain amnayas varies and others can talk about this as well. But the one that Siddhi Gopal, the order he gave me was first with the Purvamnaya, the revelation of the East, and as you can see here, Panchamukhi Devi, a goddess who's associated with the Veda and the Bhuvitaha Swaha mantra. Then he said, you move on from here to Dakshinamnaya, and the core goddess here is Dakshinakali. And here we see the influence of the Kali traditions of Tantra. And then the Western transmission in the Paschimamnaya with Kubjika Devi, a Devi that Mark Ditchkowski has written volumes about, and whose meaning as the crooked goddess links her to Kundalini, a goddess who is also known in relationship to the 6 Amnayas. Then the Northern Amnaya, Uttara Amnaya, Guyeshwari, Kalasam Karshani, Siddhalakshmi, such an important goddess for emphasizing the fact that, yes, the Kashmir Shaiva traditions of Nepal are vibrant. And then the goddess that I focused on in my work, the Urdhva Amnaya of Tripura Sundari, whose central image is the Sri Chakra or Sri Yantra, an image which powerfully and beautifully represents this idea of the one becoming the many, as the Trikona expand out and interweave this idea of expansion of the many, but integration back to the center, which is the Bindu, as the goddesses dance around in the circle within the sacred space, which itself represents the 6 directions, which in turn represents the 6 Amnayas. Adamnaya, the Amnaya of the base or the foundation, Vajrayogini and also Hartakeshi, highlighting here with this incorporation of this important Buddhist Dakini, the integration of Hinduism and Buddhism within Nepalese Sarvāmnāya, which is beautifully depicted here in this modern tanka that situates Sri Yantra at its center. So I've just reviewed in just a few minutes all 6 Amnayas and the deities associated with them. Each of them has their mantras and their yantras and their sadhanas associated with them. Sadhakas like Staneshwar and Lord 3 and Prem Chetan and Prem Chaitanya, they know these texts on the intimate level of an embodied level of the initiations they've received, the meditation practices they've done, the countless mantras they've recited, and the experiences and revelations that have come alive through that, experiences and revelations that are to encode the body as the body of the vibrating goddess. And that is kind of the most profound and important and deepest level of this practice. And it's really beyond scholarship. You cannot capture the wisdom that comes from sadhana in words. So, since I know there are members of Vimarsha here, I just wanted to say to you that, part of what's so beautiful and powerful about Nepal is you have these living sadhakas, and you have a culture in which this sadhana and its symbols and its practices are still alive. And it is spread throughout that culture. So we have painters who are initiated into it, like Narayan Chitrakar here at Bhaktapur, painting the Sri Yantra that I asked him to make while I was doing my research in Nepal. He also does the Navadurga Mandala, which is the symbol for the city of Bhaktapur itself, which is understood to be designed as a Navadurga Mandala with Shakta Pitas in the 8 directions, and Bhairavas and Ganeshas and Devis interwoven at each of those locations. And the temple architects in Nepal understand that temples like Nyatapola are the manifestation of beta logic, the manifestation of the wisdom of the Sarvamnaya, the Vishvarupa tradition. And we have priests like Sandeepa Sabkota here with his teacher Maheshwar Juju Rajopadhyaya at Nala Bhagawati, who have such important knowledge and help preserve the living traditions of the temple practice, which is so important. You have the kind of public temple practice happening in the social sphere, empowering Nepālī Mandala, and you have to understand that set of practice in relationship to the private and personal practice. So wonderful photo that Sandeep shared with me. We have the temples from the three we have the priests here from the three Talaju Bhavani temples of the three cities of Kathmandu, Bhaktapur, and Patan in this important photo. Dancers are also a part of this living tradition. These are the Navadurga dancers of Bhaktapur. Bhaktapur itself is a living mandala, and it interweaves kind of structurally the logic of Sarvamnaya, and these dancers dance through the different regions of the city as a kind of symbolic way of kind of highlighting the interconnection of the many to the one. The tabla players and musicians are connected in meaningful ways to this tradition, not only because great tabla players like Shambhu Prasad Mishra and great vocalists know this tradition and are initiated into it, but also because music itself reflects the beauty and the wisdom and the power of how the goddess manifests. And so I want to also honor my teacher, Homnath Upadhyaya. This is, I took the thread ceremony with him in Nepal at Pashupatinath in 1997. This image is of Talaju Bhavani. It's in Bhaktapur. Talaju is the royal goddess of Nepal, and there's been much speculation on who Talaju is. And Mark Ditchkowski says Talaju is Paschimamnaya. Talaju is Kubjika. What I tried to suggest in my book, The Goddess Within and Beyond the Three Cities, is that Talaju can't really be limited to any one particular goddess. In Newari, the name means the goddess on high, associated with the goddess that's worshipped in the upper room of the temple or the home. But if you add to that a kind of creative hermeneutics of Talaju in Sanskrit, you get the from the root ij, the one who vibrates at the bottom, the Tala Eju. And there, then you can link together this idea that she's at the top and she's at the bottom, and she's everything in between. She is that same goddess who vibrates as Kundalini and ascends to the height. She is the center and she is the periphery. And what we need to understand about Sarvamnaya is that it is a tradition that incorporates all the revelations. And so each and every revelation can be a gateway to that supreme goddess. And whichever revelation you start with, whether it's Uttara or Purva or Paschima or Ada or Urdhva, the idea is to incorporate the totality, to embrace all of it, to kind of recognize and experience the Vishvarupa within you, to find that center point within you that manifests and connects you to the many. So I close here just looking fondly and lovingly to the Himalayas overlooking Kirtipur here. I have not been back to Nepal in 25 years. I so much want to go. I plan to go in May. I'm so grateful to be connected with this group, and I'm so grateful to Stanishwar and others who are helping me get back to Nepal and keep my connection. This image, this last image, a very important image, Stanishwar sent it to me, and he can talk to us more about it. I am going to close out with just a few closing comments in Nepali. The image here that you see is from the Nepal National Museum, and it shows all of the deities and mandalas, yantras associated with the Sarvāmnāya. So very beautiful image. Unfortunately, it's behind glass, and you obviously can see, it's hard to see through the reflection.
Now it is the turn of Daniel Lima.
Thank you, Sandeep. It's an honor to be in the presence of all of you, Staneshwarji, of course, and Madhav, Lochri, and Jeffrey. So my question, it refers to something Jeffrey said in the beginning about the presence of Trika in Sarvamnaya in the Nepalese Tantra. So in the scheme of the Amnayas that you presented, Purvamnaya is represented by Panchamukhi. Now, elsewhere I've seen Bhuvaneshwari, Purneshwari, other goddesses fulfilling that role. You mentioned, of course, the Uttaramnaya is a living sign of the Kashmiri tradition living in Nepal. I suppose related to the Grama side of the Kashmiri tradition. But my question is about the worship of the Trika triad of goddesses, Para, 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 Apara, that makes the core of the Trika as we know it. What your research or knowledge tells about that tradition in Nepal, whether I suppose there are people initiated in it, practicing it in private maybe, but also like if that Upasana lives in the culture in temples somewhere. So yeah, that's my question.
So I will humbly pass this question along to our mutual Guruji, Staneshwar. This is, I think, one of the burning questions, and one of the things that like Mark Dishkowski gets kind of territorial about, can we prove that concretely that the triad is there? So Staneshwarji, can you please speak to this?
In 1996-97, when I worked alongside Jeffrey Liedtke, the focus quickly became Tripura Sundari. And we did not address Sarvamnaya in its depth. It was neither possible nor was timely. And I also needed some type of confirmation from our friend of his seriousness. I knew him not for too long. And some of you who know me for many years, you also should know that I am not so eager to reveal all my practices. You have to prove that you are worthy of learning these things. Not to me. I don't need anything, money or name support, but I need the dedication to this parampara that we struggle so dearly to conserve. So that is the reason why we did not discuss everything there. It was neither timely nor possible for the project. But what I can tell you decisively is the three different traditions of Trika. The pure Trika tradition, you have to go read in conservation of Trika Sadbhava, Tantra Sadbhava type texts conserved in Nepal, number one. These are the pure Trika traditions that we are crediting today as a misnomer to only Kashmir, because I agree with you that like Somananda, Vasugupta, Kallata, Jayaratha, Abhinavagupta, Kshemaraja, all these are Kashmiri through and through. But there is very little evidence to tell you that those original agamas were actually composed in Kashmir. Abhinavagupta himself migrated, his grandfather, I think, from outside of Kashmir. And so many of the agamas were brought to Kashmir and to elsewhere the same way. So the origin story, I don't want to go too much, but then I told you the other forms. I mean, how different are other forms? If you have the para, para, and apara in the exact order, with the exact mantra, in the lengthy mantra of 42 letters, if there are 2 or 3 letters variations, would you still consider that valid parampara? And not like somebody made up, but in the original agamas? I mean, it would be idiotic to reject that, right? So you will find that a 1 or 2 letter modifications and kept the Trika alive in the tradition of Kubjika. And the same goes also in the Sri Vidya manuals. So when Trika is kept separate, you will have to consult texts like Chinchini Mata, and then you will find in the southern Amnaya or Dakshinamnaya. Sorry, Purvamnaya. And then in the Dakshinamnaya, you will have Tripura Sundari, and then the Urdhvamnaya will be very different. But then when you integrate these Vidyas in the Paschimamnaya, then Trika you will find in Paschimamnaya. But when you integrate this Vidya in Urdhvamnaya, then with this slight mantra variation, just a couple of phonemes difference, you will find integrated within Sri Vidya tradition. In Nepal, we call that integration samashti. Everybody who knows Nepalese Tantra knows the word samashti. So this is like a samashti vyashti. There's a separation, integration. So Tantrics were so comfortable in blending. Now that is why this Faulkner's theory of cognitive blending attracted me so much. So these paramparas are decisively alive, and many of the sadhakas here who feel so uncomfortable even to talk this much. I think this much is okay to share. I hope you approve of speaking this much, because we have been very shy to speak to outside community too. Thank you so much.
Stanishwarji, can I ask a quick follow-up question?
Sure.
Just catching the phrase that's so well known in Nepal is, it's samashti vyakti. What was it?
Vyashti. Vyashti is a separation. Samashti is an integration.
Yeah. And that term itself refers to this integration, you would say, of these of the mantras associated with the Trika triad.
Not just Trika triad. In the samashti, what we do is there is one Amnaya deity we worship, and then we can do samashti, integrate that with the other Amnaya deity there.
Yeah.
We dissolve, like in the Sri Yantra, for example, if you have deities in the 16 petal lotus worshipped, and then we do the samashti of bringing them back to the 8 petals. And then, so it's a involution type would be samashti, and evolution type would be vyashti.
Okay. And in that process is included, among other mantras, the mantras
Absolutely.
of the triad, right?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you, Abbas Bhai. It's actually an honor to be connected, thanks to the digital media also, that we are globally connected today. And it gives me force, power to speak. As you see, I've been trying to create global awareness on these, and having brothers and sisters from Nepal to participate in these activities is very empowering experience for me. And the question is very deep, Abbas Bhai, what you raised, is I have felt since the day I became a teacher, establishing the Department of Tantra in 1991. My own vision was that according to what I followed in Banaras, my gurus there in the university taught me philosophies, all the tantric philosophies and other philosophies. But as soon as issues of practice came, you know, it is very common to go to Guru's house and enjoy the lunch and the dinners there. And that culture was very much alive. And only in those private settings, I was exposed to rituals. I personally will never go showing all our rituals to the public. I will share among the initiates. I will encourage people to come to be initiates, because there is nothing wrong. It's not like a magic show, like a PC Sarkar or whatever is coming and you pay like $1,000 and then, you know, rupees, and you go and just watch a little freak show. We are not freak show people. We are not doing some magic here. We are doing life transforming engineering here. We can give you transformed experiences here. And for that, you have to be willing to practice. And we don't need anything from you. Keep your money, okay? Because first of all, people are worried if this guru is going to ask for some money. They love their money more than their life. You know, just keep it. We don't need it. But have some respect for our tradition, for our gurus. And you don't need to show respect to me. I'm nobody in this whole chain. So this is my attitude. And what to promote is philosophy. Why? Because this is a public discourse. And we have to train our acharyas. Do not ever hesitate. I have never hesitated. My Guru Prem Chetan was so generous. I will give you Purna Visheka when you come with the list of the gurus. You have other 9 gurus, and then you show me which gurus, what you studied with, and then I'll give you Purna Visheka. I don't know whether that tradition existed, but he was very much forcing me to go and learn with all the other gurus, teachers, philosophers of the time, you know. Without that openness, look at Abhinava Gupta. How many teachers he went to? And of course, he always has his ultimate guru. So we may not be able to learn everything from one teacher. Have that openness to learn with everybody that can teach you. Shivadik stamba paryantam yasyasti guru santati tasya me sarva shishyasya kona pujyo mahitale. There are many variants of this line, this verse, but generally the essence is Brahmadi stamba paryantam samse. Starting from Lord Brahma to just a gnat, a fly, yasyastu guru santati. All these are my gurus. Tasya me sarva shishyasya. I'm a disciple of everybody. Kona pujyo mahitale. Who is not there for me to honor. So this is a good sadhaka. This is a sadhaka attitude. I am the guru. I cannot learn from anybody else. Okay, you are full. You cannot learn from anybody. You are never going to learn anything. So we know that. But then the problem came is like some gurus said, you know, why are you teaching this parampara of Bengal or that parampara from Kashmir or that parampara from Kerala? This is the only Nepalese parampara. And I, with all due respect, Nepal's parampara incorporates all. That is the way I have been trained by so many gurus, not just my fancy. And that is the way I have read in Agamas. That is the way I have been handed down these manuals, Puja Paddhati. So but then give me your manual, let me check and verify. No, I'm not going to give you. No, I mean, among sadhakas, we can share. But for the anthropology, I'm talking about, you want to do a little field work and then see, you know, I'm not your monkey. I don't dance the way you like me to. You know, I'm the king of my territory. You know, Sarva Samrajya, Sarva Meda, Mahavisheka, Sarva Adhikara. What does that mean? We write Parama Bhattaraka. In Kashmir, they have the tradition of writing Rajanaka, the kings. And we in Nepal, you know, after Purnavisheka, we are authorized to write Parama Bhattaraka. in Nepal, this is not just for the kings. We are the kings of our tantric domain, of our spirituality. And we don't need to throw our pearls for those who do not know what it is. So let us integrate both our acharyas, our temple priests, who know so much of valuable things in the ritual domain. We have to honor them. And if we are qualified, we have to learn when they have to teach us. And then those who are trained in philosophies, our acharyas in temple have to learn. Why? Because those rituals were never meant to be practiced in isolation, and those philosophies were never meant to be done in isolation. They were trained hand by hand, and somehow, somewhere, we were unable to maintain it. Sometimes education gets low, and then also we are conservative in the family ties, like only my children can learn these things. And what if your child is not brilliant? And then the parampara, traditions get weak. We have to be open to all the people without any restriction, if they have sincerity. Thank you.